What if I told you that in 1918, a British engineer sat down with a calculator and mathematically proved that capitalism can never work? Not philosophically, not morally, mathematically. And the banking system has been hiding this equation ever since. Here is a question that should keep every economist awake at night. If workers produce all the goods, and workers receive wages to buy those goods, why is there never enough money to buy everything that was produced? Think about it. Every factory, every business, every economy works the same way. You pay workers, workers make products, those products go on sale, and workers are supposed to buy them back with their wages. Simple, right? But here is the problem that nobody wants to talk about. There is always a gap. The total price of everything produced is always higher than the total wages paid out to buy it. Always. And that gap is the reason you are in debt. That gap is why economies collapse. And one man over 100 years ago not only discovered this gap, he wrote the equation that proves it exists. His name was Clifford Hugh Douglas, a Scottish engineer, a major in the Royal Flying Corps during World War I, and a man whose ideas were so dangerous to the financial establishment that they were systematically erased from economic history. Douglas did not write angry manifestos. He did not organize protests. He simply looked at the accounting books of British factories and realized that the numbers did not add up. Not in one factory, in all of them. What he discovered became known as the A+B Theorem, and what you are about to learn is the financial truth that central banks, economists, and governments have spent a century trying to bury. Welcome to the financial system. Control the money, control the history. And remember, simple is never easy. To understand what Douglas discovered, you need to understand who he was. Clifford Hugh Douglas was born in 1879, educated at Cambridge, and spent his career building things: railways in Argentina, electrical systems in India, aircraft factories during the war. He was not a philosopher, he was not an economist, he was an engineer, and engineers do not accept systems that do not balance. During World War I, Douglas was assigned as assistant superintendent at the Royal Aircraft Factory in Farnborough, England. His job was to reorganize production to meet wartime demands, and that is when he noticed something strange. Every week he reviewed the factory's accounts, and every week the same pattern appeared. The total cost of goods produced was higher than the total wages, salaries, and dividends paid out during the same period, every single week, without exception. Now, to an accountant, this might seem normal. Of course, costs include more than wages. There are raw materials, machinery, bank charges, overhead. But Douglas saw something deeper. He asked a question that nobody else was asking. If the only money available to buy goods is the money paid out in wages and dividends, and the prices of goods include costs beyond wages and dividends, then how can consumers ever buy all the goods that are produced? The answer, he realized, was that they cannot. Mathematically, they cannot. And that single insight would consume the rest of his life. Douglas formalized his discovery in what he called the A+B Theorem, and here's how it works. Every business has two types of payments. The first type, which Douglas called A payments, are payments made directly to individuals: wages, salaries, and dividends. This is money that ends up in people's pockets. This is purchasing power. The second type, B payments, are payments made to other organizations: raw materials from suppliers, bank charges, machine maintenance, rent, utilities, depreciation costs for equipment. This money does not go directly to consumers. It goes to other businesses who in turn have their own A and B payments. Now here is the mathematical problem. The price of any product must cover all costs, both A and B. That means prices equal A plus B. But the only money distributed to consumers as purchasing power is A, not A plus B, just A. So what does this mean? It means there's a structural gap between the total prices of goods available for sale and the total purchasing power available to buy them. And that gap is permanent. It is not a temporary imbalance. It is built into the system itself. But wait, you might say, don't those B payments eventually become someone else's A payments? Doesn't the money that goes to suppliers eventually become wages for their workers? In theory, yes, but there is a timing problem and a mathematics problem. Because B payments include costs that were incurred in the past, machinery purchased years ago, buildings constructed decades ago, loans taken out before you were born. These capital costs are being recovered in today's prices, but the money to pay for them was distributed long ago. Douglas realized that as technology advances, as machines replace labor, the B costs grow relative to A costs. More of the economy's costs are tied up in capital and overhead, less in wages. And that means the gap between prices and purchasing power grows wider over time, not narrower, wider. So how does the economy keep functioning if there is always a gap between prices and purchasing power? Douglas identified 3 escape valves, and all of them are destructive. The first is debt. Consumers borrow money to fill the gap. Businesses borrow money to stay afloat. Governments borrow money to stimulate demand. The banking system creates new money through loans, and this temporarily fills the purchasing power gap. But here is the trap. Every loan comes with interest, and interest increases B costs, which widens the gap further, which requires more borrowing, which creates more interest. It is a spiral, a mathematical spiral that can only end in collapse. The second escape valve is exports. If domestic consumers cannot buy all the goods produced, sell them abroad. But every country cannot be a net exporter. Someone has to import. And if every country is trying to export its way out of the same structural problem, what you get is trade wars, currency manipulation, and eventually real wars over markets. The third escape valve is waste and destruction. Build products nobody needs, planned obsolescence, artificial scarcity, or the most effective form of economic stimulus ever invented, war. War destroys goods without anyone needing to buy them. War creates demand without creating supply. War solves the purchasing power gap by eliminating the products themselves. Douglas looked at the First World War through this lens and saw something chilling. He saw that the industrial system required periodic destruction to keep functioning, not because people wanted war, but because the mathematics of the system demanded it. Douglas did not just identify the problem. He proposed a solution. And this is where his ideas became dangerous. He argued that if the gap between prices and purchasing power is structural, then the solution must also be structural. He proposed 2 mechanisms. The first was a national dividend, a regular payment to every citizen not as welfare, but as their rightful share of the nation's productive capacity. Douglas believed that as machines did more work, the wealth created by that work should flow to all citizens, not just to those who owned the machines. The second mechanism was a compensated price, a discount applied at the point of sale, funded by the creation of new money that reflected the real productive capacity of the economy. This would lower prices to match available purchasing power without requiring debt. Douglas called this system social credit. And in the 1920s and 1930s, it became one of the most influential economic movements in the world. John Maynard Keynes, the most celebrated economist of the 20th century, acknowledged that Douglas had identified a real problem. Study groups formed across Britain, Canada, Australia, New Zealand. Politicians debated his ideas in Parliament. Even the government of Alberta, Canada, was elected in 1935 on a platform of implementing social credit. But here is what happened next, and this is where the story turns dark.
When William Aberhart's Social Credit Party won the 1935 Alberta election with 56 of 63 seats, they inherited an empty treasury and a population desperate for change. They attempted to implement Douglas's ideas. They issued prosperity certificates, a form of local currency. They passed 15 bills aimed at reforming the monetary system. And the federal government struck down every single one. The Supreme Court of Canada declared their legislation unconstitutional. The banks threatened to cut off credit. The newspapers, owned by the same financial interests Douglas had identified, ran relentless campaigns against the movement. Within a few years, social credit in Alberta had been forced to abandon its monetary reforms entirely. Douglas himself watched from England as his ideas were first diluted, then abandoned, then erased from economic discourse. By the time he died in 1952, the movement he had started was a shadow of its former self. And in mainstream economics, his name was never mentioned. Think about that. An engineer identifies a mathematical flaw in the financial system. He publishes books, gives evidence before banking inquiries, lectures in parliaments around the world. His ideas inspire mass movements. A government is elected to implement his proposals. And then, silence.
His work disappears from university curricula. His name vanishes from economic textbooks. A century later, almost nobody has heard of him. But here is what did not disappear: the gap. The structural deficiency in purchasing power that Douglas identified in 1918 is still there, and it has grown larger with every decade. Today, global debt exceeds $300 trillion. Household debt in most developed nations is at record levels, and the gap between what workers earn and what goods cost continues to widen. The system has not been fixed, it has only learned to hide its mathematics better. So what is the lesson? It is not simply that Douglas was right or wrong. Economics is more complex than a single theorem. But here is what cannot be denied. For 100 years, the financial system has required ever-increasing debt to function. Not because people are irresponsible, not because governments are wasteful, but because the system itself generates prices faster than it generates purchasing power. Every financial crisis of the modern era, the Great Depression, the stagflation of the 1970s, the crash of 2008, the pandemic debt explosion, all of them follow the same pattern Douglas described: a buildup of debt, a collapse of purchasing power, a desperate intervention by governments and central banks, and then the cycle begins again. The A+B theorem may be contested, but the gap it describes is real. And until that gap is addressed, the system will continue to require debt, waste, and periodic collapse to survive. Not because of greed or corruption, though those exist in abundance, but because of mathematics. Cold, indifferent mathematics. Clifford Douglas spent 30 years trying to make people see this. He was called a crank, a heretic, a dangerous radical. But he was something far more unsettling. He was an engineer who looked at the financial system the way he looked at a machine and concluded that it was designed to break. History does not repeat, but if you do not understand it, it will crush you all the same. If this gave you a new perspective, hit subscribe. Its financial system and history leaves clues. I show you where the money leads.